be here until later, but hey everybody, it's Wendy Cherry, the Goddess Awakening and Healing Sanctuary. Today's topic is going to be He Too, and it's going to be about the sexual violence against men. And so we welcome you to come in. We welcome you to ask questions, type in anything in the chat box. Please like, please share, please, add any insight that you have, and then we will actually start the actual taping now. Okay. Welcome to the Sanctuary. You're listening to DC Radio 96.3, HD4, and DCRadio.gov, where we inspire, educate, and empower women of color to unapologetically transform into their most authentic and healthy selves by tapping into the goddess within. I'm Wendy Cherry, your host, and the spotlight has been on sexual abuse against children and women for the last few weeks because of a well-known documentary that has been out. And what we wanted to focus on here is about one of the best kept secrets over the decades, and that is sexual violence against boys and men. So I have two great guests with me today. The first one is Manifest Ra, and he is the visionary and founder of the SageMen, a sacred manhood community providing personal development, rights programs, and healing retreats to help men embrace their divine masculinity and live from their highest purpose. So that sounds awesome. Welcome, Manifest. And then I have my brother, Cole Parker, who, as an older sibling in his single parent household, took on the responsibility of being the protector of the house, which is what many people do. At a very young age, he witnessed firsthand his inability to protect a loved one while realizing that she couldn't even protect herself. So we went to college together. Shout out to Cole. Hey, Cole, come on in and say hey to the people. Hello. Yes, thank you for coming. So Cole is one of my Omega brothers that Coleman Love in the house. And I saw a post about him on his Divas In Defense page. So he owns he's a co-founder along with his brother, Divas In Defense. Yeah, I think you have to turn down, he has to turn down his mic. He has to turn down the Facebook. So we are going to be talking about sexual violence against men. So what is happening is I was just strolling on Facebook the other day, and I saw Cole post about a situation that happened to him from his babysitter when he was a child. And I know that all these conversations are happening around sexual violence and abuse against, maybe the spotlight has been on women more, but in my experience in relationships, I have not really had a relationship with one male who has not been violated from a woman. They were able to share that with me, whether it was the babysitter, whether it was the cousin, whether it was the neighbor. It's something that seems to be very prevalent. And so when I saw Cole type that, along with, I think, somebody from Power, I think, is also, and other people are starting to come out, males are starting to come out and say, like we have the Me Too movement, it's now He Too. Men are starting to say that it has happened to them. So it's interesting. Manifest and I were just having a conversation about this at the end of last week. And so he was already coming. So we said, what a good way to keep the spotlight on this and really keep the conversation going about the healing for women, of course, but also the healing for men, which is sometimes lost in the sauce. Because men, for whatever reason, are less, maybe not less willing. I don't know what it is. So Manifest can talk about that. But I wanted to talk to Cole first. And Cole, let's just talk about your experience, because what I was doing when I was doing some research, there's a website called oneinsix.org. And one of their facts that's at the front of the page says at least 1 in 6 men have been sexually abused or assaulted. That's 1 in 6. So that is probably your brother, your husband, your cousin, your uncle, your granddaddy, somebody in the family this terrible act has happened to. But of course, because they are supposed to be strong and all these things, that they probably won't talk about it. And I usually talk about women's issues here in the sanctuary, but I just thought that this was important because what's the good of the sisters being healed and working on themselves and getting awakened and everything if our brothers and the people that we love and our husbands and people in our family aren't doing the same thing? The goal is to heal the community. So I thought that this was a good time to have this conversation. And I usually do focus on health too. And so I did some research on that. So males who were sexually abused have a higher rate of prostate cancer and heart disease as they go older. So even though somebody might say, I like blocked it out and it doesn't really bother me, we know that heart disease is the leading cause of death for men in the US. So sometimes these things get into our DNA and into our cells, these traumas, and then they present themselves in other ways. So Cole, let's just talk about your experience, one, and what made you go ahead and just come out on Facebook like that.
Hey, peace, Cole.
No, not really. You're kind of breaking up. It's better now. Yes. Yikes. Okay, what does a lot mean? What has happened? Mm. My mother's friend and just so much more. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this has been 2 or 3 days for me. Right. I was even to share my story. So, when I say a lot, I mean, I did not realize how many men, like this 1 in 6 number, this might be people who finally came to say, it happened to me. But in my immediate circle, it's more like 3 out of 5. Yeah. Well, I did want to say that. I meant to say that the number is underrepresenting really what it is, because also usually when I see studies happening, they ain't looking at people that look like me. So I think also they're not including, and I'm not sure, but I would think that maybe we are not in that number. So I'm pretty sure it's a higher number. So to your point. Mm-hmm. I live a business where I live for the protection of women all the time, and as a father of 3 sons, I'm forgetting about my own son, so busy concentrating on my daughter.
really damaging effects of that in the long term. A lot of men like myself, we've discussed the insatiable appetite for sex.
Yeah.
And so much more. So, those are things that are really high concern. And I can't wait for manifest on this side so that way we can know what's going on.
Yeah, sex is a spiritual connection a lot of times. And so when you are just having those experiences and you're not prepared for them, you're not ready for them, I'm sure it has a detrimental effect. And I know Manifest can probably talk about that part of it too, the spiritual part of it and the connection part. So, I'm glad that you came out to share your story. So we appreciate that. And there was something that you said when we were doing pre-production, and you were talking about, you said it, but you necessarily didn't feel like it affected you that much. So let's talk about that and why you think that. Oh. Right. 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 Well, we appreciate that. And, when I read your blog, you kind of had a few little zinger jokes in there, but I also understand that you want to inspire people without frightening them and enlighten them without frightening them. And sometimes if you just give them the straight up, then they don't connect. And then they're afraid to maybe even participate in the conversation. So I understand having to do that. I do that here on the show. So what has been the most surprising, besides you be getting bombarded with DMs and people that talking about it? What has been maybe the most, one, surprising thing that you have learned, and then two, the best thing that has come out of it just in the last 3 days for yourself or maybe for your family? Mm. Yeah.
Because in some cases, like myself, we were raped.
Right.
We were raped as kids. It took me this recently, like just yesterday, like I was molested as a child. They're like, somebody like, oh, you were raped.
Yeah.
Education is such a hard term.
Right.
But in reality, that's exactly what happened. I would say what it has done for my personally and my family is that when it comes to my son, I'm able to engage that conversation. And because I do deal with women who share stories of rape and abuse and other malicious things, that may have been even another reason why I dismissed mine.
Right.
I wasn't stabbed 47 times by my husband and left for dead. I wasn't brutally raped by a group of guys in an alley. I wasn't left for dead. So it's almost one of the things where as a victim / survivor, you're just comparing your pain to others, but there is no comparison because that pain is individualized for yourself.
That's true. And one of the things is that the mind and the heart can forgive, but the body doesn't forgive. The body always presents the invoice at some point in life to kind of like atone for the things that have done that we know about and that we also don't know about. So one, I just wanted to say to you, even though you're saying that, you know, you may not have felt affected, probably if you were to poll people who were in relationship with you over the years, they might not agree. And, you know, it probably has shown up in so many ways that all of you gentlemen don't know. And for women who are dealing with men who have had that trauma, you know, I think sometimes you all present yourselves in a certain way and we just don't even know what's happening. And then a lot of times as nurturers, we're thinking that we can make it all better by doing whatever. So also, if there is a piqued interest for sex, then trying to satisfy the appetite of that person, you get worn out, you know, and so that doesn't help. It doesn't ever satiate, because the work has to be done with, like you're saying, identifying and getting it up and out, identifying it happened, knowing that it's not okay, and then talking about it so that it frees you and it frees your body. So I think that there's like some steps that go along with this kind of traumatic experience to heal. And that's where we can bring Manifest in on, is because that's kind of like what he does. So can you reintroduce yourself and tell us about your the SageMen and how you are bringing the brothers, and have been for decades, bringing the brothers into the conversation of healing?
Absolutely. Again, my name is Manifest Ra. Welcome, Cole. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast with Wendy as well. My name is Manifest Ra, founder and visionary of the SageMen, which is a sacred community where men are cultivating their divine masculinity. They are healing. They're doing the inner work necessary to transform themselves. And so we have 7 archetypes of sacred manhood: the visionary, the warrior, the enterpriser, the healer, the tantric, the pillar, and the mystic. And so we're talking about a comprehensive approach to manhood. And so one that I just spoke of is the healer. And so too often men want to stay within the warrior, you know, beat our chest, you know, and just, you know, always be the tough guy, without understanding that part of the warrior is also being the healer, being able to be vulnerable, being able to come forward with information about scenarios that are not comfortable. That's more the warrior than someone who just wants to stay within, quote unquote, the technical side of the warrior. And so I encourage men through the platform of the SageMen to come forward and share about their painful experiences, their dramas, their traumas. We have men's healing circles. We do retreats. We even have a developing rites of passage program for men to go deeper. And one of the things that I found, Wendy, is that oftentimes we go through these men's healing circles that it takes a couple of rounds for the men to even begin to open up. You know, they want to talk about, you know, politics, Trump, you know, everything else, right, and football, before we can even start the process of going within and dealing with what's going on really within us. Right. And so, you know, from talking to sisters like yourself and even being amongst some of those healing processes with the women, I mean, you all come through the door crying, you know, throwing it out, hey, I want to get this stuff off of me. This is what happened, you know, that kind of thing. And you're doing group hugs. And so what I remember is a men's healing circle many years ago. And we started at 7 p.m. And it was about 25 brothers in the room. And so, you know, as we went around and I was the moderator, I really wanted the brothers to come forward and begin sharing one thing that they're really dealing with. And everybody spoke third person, you know what I mean? It was about everything else in the universe and the world. And I was really frustrated. And my dad was there that particular evening. And so I just went in, you know what I mean? I kind of got emotional when I said, listen, you know, I love my dad. He's a Vietnam veteran, but I got to go in here because every man in here is holding back and they're dealing with something, but that they're not coming forward with. Right. And I know it's eating at you. You know, I know it's eating at you. Right. So I talked about my dad being a Vietnam veteran, his PTSD, and his traumas, and how it's affected me, my family, my mother, my brother, my sister, particularly the women in his life. Okay. And so after I went all in, you know, brothers started going all in. You know what I mean? And what I thought would be a real quick, you know, process, because nobody wanted to open up, it was coming up on 12 midnight and still most of the brothers were still there.
Right.
So, we do have the capacity and the ability to go in and be that internal warrior from a healing perspective. But what we have to do is we have to change the narrative on what manhood is. It's not just being a tough guy all the time. It's not just being a financial provider. It's actually being the healer, being able to say, you know what, I am going to do my healing work, and whatever that I've experienced in life is not my identity. It's my temporary learning process on my evolutionary curve in this incarnation, but it doesn't define me as a man. And so I can show up and I can talk about, whatever I've been through from a place of learning, from a place of, I want to heal from this. And when I heal from this, I can be a greater proponent for healing for all men and women on the planet. And so when we change that, when we support men coming forward, when we encourage men coming forward, we're going to see a major shift in our families, in our communities. Because women, you all naturally do this healing work a lot more than we do. But too many men, as Cole said, we refuse to do this kind of work. Healing work, the inner work doesn't sound appealing.
Right.
And so we have to change that narrative.
So you use the word evolutionary. Mm-hmm. So did you just pop into the world as Manifest Ra and you already knew about the 7 archetypes? Because how did you know all this?
Well, I've done a lot of healing myself.
Okay.
I remember sharing this with some folks not too long ago about when I was in my mom's womb. My dad was in Vietnam.
Okay.
So she developed some abandonment complexes, thinking that he wasn't going to return, that he would get killed in Vietnam. Mm. And so as I was in the womb, I absorbed a lot of this emotional energy, if you will. And so when one is in the womb and they're experiencing a level of abandonment for whatever reason, their root chakra and their sacral chakra is off. The root chakra deals, and for those that are listening for the first time and don't know what the term chakra means, it means energy centers.
Okay.
It's a lot of wisdom traditions, primarily from the East, really articulate that. And so our root is like when you think of a tree, the tree is only as strong as its roots.
Yes.
And so it can extend and expand out based off the strength of the roots. And so my root chakra, my sense of security has been off to a certain extent in my lifetime. And so it took me a long time to figure that out. So when I would approach my relationships from a place of being a clinger, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, hey, I can't leave. I got to stay in this no matter what. I got to, make this work.
Okay. I
don't want to be left, if you will. And so having gone through that process of remembering that, working through that, I see how that expresses itself in so many people. And so when we talk about people who experience abuse, sexual abuse, it disrupts the root chakra and the sacral chakra. So when we talk about prostate cancer, which deals with the sacral and the root, if you will, the sexual centers, surrounding the security, there's no coincidence that it's so much prostate cancer with men because they've never really healed, purified, and transformed those energy centers that were disrupted. And so, through my own process of working through my fears, which I'm still working through, about how I've showed up in the world, in my relationships, I'm able to be more transparent with men and women on how we all need to heal.
Yeah. So I just had this whole aha moment because I deal with women at the Goddess Awakening and Healing Sanctuary, and it's a lot about wombs trauma, right? A lot of times. And our mutual friend Tama from the womb sauna was my womb practitioner because I too experienced some things that created this like my womb wasn't healthy, let's say that. And so I hadn't even connected the prostate part with trauma in men to the fibroids and PCOS and all these different things that women have. So it's a connection. And then my dad actually died of prostate cancer. So now I'm just starting to think, who knows what he was pushing down. He was always that happy-go-lucky, Leo, showing up and showing out. But I don't know about whatever traumas that he was covering so that he could show up and show out and maybe be covering these things up. You know what I'm saying? So I'm having like an aha moment there. The other thing is you talked about being in the mom's womb. the newest science is when you're in your mom's womb, that pretty much predicts everything for your life. It's called epigenetics, and signals turn on and off depending on your mom's state of mind when you were in her body. So if she was happy, if she was so peaceful, if she was eating great foods, if she was smoking, if she was drinking, if she was stressed out, just depending on that, even decides whether or not you should be doing kales and green drinks. You know what I'm saying? Like, the food that you eat really depends on what was going on with your mom's state of mind when you were in her womb. Because if you think of Scandal, and I always use this this as an example. Remember, in the beginning of Scandal, if you watched it, somebody was always taking a picture, and it always sounded like the camera. It's an imprint that she has. So if she's afraid your dad is not going to come back to her from Vietnam, that there's an imprint there that goes to the baby. And now you have that. It's the same thing if she was eating a banana, driving down the street, got into a car accident, the imprint of that banana, if she keeps thinking about it, it's going to remind her of that car accident, and there's the imprint. So maybe when you start to eat bananas, you feel something, you get sick, you get the itchy throat. It doesn't have to be anything really, really harsh, but your body has taken an imprint of it, and then it'll try to protect itself.
That is so well said. Imprints. And so upwards of 90% of our thought process is the subconscious mind. It's not the conscious mind. For those who are listening, subconscious mind is everything we've experienced in our lifetime. Our past, our childhood issues, formative years, our relationships, our approaches to health, wellness, all those things. So triggers, anything can trigger certain recesses of the subconscious mind. Some of those traumas and dramas and those issues. It can be a color, it can be a scent, smell, right. It can be a way of touch, it can be something visual, through our senses. And so through my training with mindful meditation, we have to become the observer. We have to understand that we're not our thoughts and we're not our emotions. And so when we talk about the lower energy centers, the faculties like the root and the sacral chakra, they deal with our sense of security, deal with our instinct, our emotional energies. And so if we stay primarily living in our instinctual and our physical and our emotional energies, we'll always be affected by those triggers. We'll always be triggered by something in our past. And so one of the most important ways of transcending or dealing with, from a healthy standpoint, traumas is to practice mindful meditation. Where very quickly a proponent of that or a practitioner of that can begin to see that, okay, I'm not my thoughts. I'm having these thoughts of what happened to me or what I experienced, but I can be the observer. I can acknowledge it. I can watch it come and I can watch it go, and I can bring my awareness back to the moment, my place of center, my true divinity. And so when we do that, then those issues, those past issues and traumas have less of a hold on us because we're not living from our instinct and our emotions.
So I'm looking at, so for those who are on the radio, we're doing this Facebook Live, and I'm looking at some of the comments, and Cole mentioned toxic masculinity. So let's go back a little bit to what you were talking about, I guess the chakras, but for if they're blocked, stagnant, or whatever, in males specifically, they might start to show up being more aggressive, that warrior, I guess, archetype. And so let's talk about why, I think you hit it a little bit, but let's talk about and flesh out more about why males are kind of like shy to start the healing process, because they show up in many cases very toxic, specifically as we experience them, women, as we experience them. So what do you think, why do you think that is? Does it have, and what do you think it has to do with, besides like the traumas and things like that? Is there anything else that stops them from do you think that they just look weak, or what do you think would stop a male from wanting to heal himself and then heal his family?
Well, one of the first areas of importance or being is our security. Yeah. Men and women, we all, self-preservation is the first line of the hierarchy of needs, if you will. And so when the root chakra is disrupted, which deals with our security, it's either too activated or underactivated, it's closed. And so too activated, where we become sexual about everything. That's just the way we perceive the world, right. You know what I mean? Because that has been the imprint on how we came into the world or from that experience, that traumatic experience. Right. So everything becomes sexual. I remember reading about LL Cool J in his rap career, and I was always asking myself, why is every song? I mean, we like this music, but why was every song at a phase about sexuality, sexually right. suggestive? And I remember coming across an autobiography where he said when he was very young, he was a young boy, his uncle made him watch pornography. Ooh. And so that affected how he approached everything. Right. And so when we talk about an overactive root chakra, you know, that clouds our cerebral, our higher states of awareness. We look at everything from that place of security or sexuality. Right. So, you know, when we talk about men, it might be 5 men at a table, you know, they're naturally going to gravitate towards that security and that overactive root chakra. That's going to be the conversation. Right. Or it's going to be closed. So it's about, you know, really men understanding that, you know, that is not okay. You know what I mean? That is not manhood. So like the rite of passage, you were talking about a rite of passage that you have created or are going to create. And I see a lot of people asking about rites of passage on here. I think the rite of passage in the US for the male is take them to the strip club, give them something to drink. Oh, you 21 now or whatever. Even if they don't even make it to 21, it might be 15, 16. You're with your dad in the car. He's trying to feel cool around you. He takes you around his boys and y'all are drinking and he's allowing you to. And man, you got to get that girl, or, you know, encouraging the son to look at women or whatever. So I think that's kind of like the messed up rite of passage that we have now, just from what I have seen. So I think definitely shifting that into a rite of passage. So for those who don't know, I actually did a show with Marcia about rites of passage. What is a rite of passage for those who don't know? Well, rites of passage it's been around, you know, as long as people have been on the planet, if you will. It's a process over extended period of time where men or women go through certain levels of womanhood, a manhood, coming into a woman. Or a man. And so when we think about indigenous traditions, whether it's Africa, Native American, Eastern traditions, the young boys were taken out of the village, if you will, and they taught how to go into states of meditation, be the visionary, how to hunt, be the hunter, be the warrior, go through the warrior dance, build up the energy from the root chakra, open up their emotional energy, and so forth and so on. And so we talk about rites of passage, we're talking about a process where a person, a human being, will go from A to Z relative to becoming a man or a woman from a place of boyhood. Now, we're all in fraternities and sororities here, you know, on the Capitol as well. So that is a generic approach to rites of passage programs. And so it's how to, you know, come into a better man or woman relative to a fraternity and sorority. And so those are very important. That's kind of been lost in today's society, in today's world. And so men are not learning how to embrace the healer side. You know, that was a natural part of rites of passage. I don't think that anybody that I've ever spoken to, except for you, has ever talked about a male healing perspective. Cole, have you ever heard about any of these things that Manifest is talking about in any depth?
Not at all.
Right.
But I also understand as being a man who just last year I realized I have toxic masculinity. That it's not a culture that is cultivated for us to even be intimate, vulnerable, or even in a position to share things that we need in our lives to know them. Yeah. You know, it goes back to the fact of not even knowing that
Yeah. Interesting. So let's talk about, I think we have about 25 minutes or so left. Let's talk about, you talked about mindful meditation. Let's talk about some other ways that the brothers can start the healing and some experiences that you have had doing this work for so many years. You did give us the story about first nobody was talking and then everybody was talking. But let's just talk more about that and your experience and some of the results that you have seen from people that you started working with years ago to now. Do you see it show up? You know, do they sustain it?
Absolutely. Well, healing is a journey.
Right.
It's not a one day moment. It's not a one day experience. And so, what we have to encourage men in particular is to fully embrace the healing journey, and that will make them a much better warrior and a much better man.
Mhm.
So, some of the experiences I have observed is that men come into the circles, the healing circles, very, how can I say it, reluctant to share, very reluctant to go deep about what's really eating at them. Once they engage that process, they experience shifts. You know, they want to not only heal themselves, but they want to help other men heal. They see how healing transfers over into how they become better relationship partners, better fathers, and so forth and so on. And so one of my mentors, Baba Kakai Patterson, he really made a strong impression on me because when he comes into the circles, he goes right in terms of what he experienced as an early boy and his sexual traumas and things of that nature. So if he's listening out there, I know he doesn't mind. And so I've been around men who have that warrior, you know, that's totally connected to the healer, and they go right in. And so from that, again, men show up much differently in the world. They want to make a difference in their communities and help other men and women heal. And so that's what we need, because strong emotionally and how can I say it, mentally men are protectors in our community. They refuse to allow, you know, if we want to use that, you know, scenario, R. Kelly to come in and do what he did. Right. You know, so when there's an absence of comprehensive, you know, in terms of health and wellness, you know, men from a more holistic standpoint, then there's a void in our community. You know, we don't have those protectors. But you know, imagine SageMen, and I know my brother Cole has an organization, Divas In Defense. But imagine men showing up in our schools, showing up in our community centers, in our spiritual centers, demanding accountability from other men, and speaking from a place of strength on what is divine manhood. It is the healer, it is the protector, it is the warrior, and that we would not allow what we've seen in our communities, and that every man in here should go through a process of healing and transformation and releasing his own traumas and demons and so forth and so on. That kind of experience is what's needed in our communities to change the world.
So Cole, you're Divas in Defense. And so in your bio, you wrote that you were unable to protect someone that you loved, and they weren't able to protect themselves either. Tell us how you started Divas in Defense and exactly what it does.
Okay, well, it really was my mom. So I saw my mom abused in that violent situation. And being a very, very young boy, I wasn't able to sit there like 18 necessarily.
Yeah.
Jump on the back thing, but they all understand that they thrown across the room also.
Oh.
The men were not my father.
Yeah.
So there was an element of attachment, but the pain and the suffering that I saw my mom endure really made me throughout my life become a pretty much advocate for anti-violent violence.
Okay.
Even as I was a wild,
Uh-huh. Heck yeah, I've seen it myself on that campus. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, Cole. It's time for men to step up and be healers, be warriors in our communities, within ourselves first, and change this narrative. And women are waiting, other men are waiting, the world is waiting. So let's do it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about the breaking of cycles. So part of why I created the Goddess Awakening Healing Sanctuary is to start breaking cycles and to help people break cycles. So just because somebody did something in your family for decades and that's just what y'all do, you don't have to just do it just because that's what they do. And so I'm thinking about the cycle of how we may have gotten to this. And these are not statistics. This is just me using my brain and thinking of connecting the dots. So we're thinking about young girls being abused, right? And then they grow up, and then they're your babysitters, and then they are your neighbors, and then they're also your sisters and your big cousins. And so it seems to me that in many of those instances, it was just a cycle. And it doesn't excuse them at all. I'm just saying that they probably are only doing what they know and what was done to them, and also a way to trying to like sift through their anger and their shame. They're going to do it on somebody else. So it's sort of like the hurt people thing. So I'm thinking about that is a way that a cycle can be broken if we talk about this, because it doesn't make sense for just the women to get all the shine, and I'm all down for the sisters, but I totally understand the balancing, or I'm beginning to understand the balancing of the divine feminine and in the masculine side of us, and using the energies of both when it's needed. And they're not needed at all times for every situation. You use one for one and one for other, and sometimes you might be able to use them together, but just being aware of it. So that's just one of the things that I was thinking about. It's just a cycle. And a lot of people were, for some crazy reason, giving your boy a pass on TV because they said it happened to him too. So yeah, it did. And whoever did it, they wrong for doing it. But he's making conscious decisions now to treat these women a certain way, conscious decisions. And he's getting a lot of people to support him, like police and people in his camp. So at some point, the that it happened to him when he was little, it don't fly at some point. So, the other thing is accountability for ourselves. So, I know a lot of times people have been traumatized and that's their story, and they don't tell any other story. And then that becomes their badge of honor, because when they show up, they're going to talk about that's their story. And, I've seen people do it, and I may have been guilty of it in the past myself, but I learned to stop telling the same stories, because one, it reopens the wounds. It starts to focus back on the trauma. But what I'm learning to do is focus on what's next. Like, what am I trying to do next? That happened. I'm still here. I'm a survivor. I don't necessarily have to dig into those things on why they happen, because a lot of times I don't have the answers on why they happen. I take accountability for myself, but I take accountability for my own healing and my own self-preservation. So what do you think about that, Cole or Manifest? What do you guys think about just some accountability?
Absolutely. Using the story over and over and over again, but not embracing the healing. I mean, that's like, where's that going? You know
Right.
what I mean? So it's one thing to tell your story. It's one thing to say, what you experienced. But if you're not doing anything to truly heal and transform,
Mm-hmm.
then it's falling on deaf ears. You know what I mean? In some way, shape, or form, that particular person is self-medicating.
Mm-hmm.
They're abusing themselves, or they're still abusing other people, if you will. So it has to come down to the healing, and that's where the accountability is. You know, so we want to encourage men and women, wherever you are, if you've experienced any form of trauma, particularly through sexual abuse, is to hold yourself accountable and do whatever's necessary to get the healing.
Right.
Whether that's going to a psychotherapist, professional counselor, coming to women's or men's healing circles. You cannot be still and just, continue to exist, because again, from my observation, two things happen. We either hurt ourselves through self-medicating and abusing ourselves, or we're going to hurt someone else.
Right.
And so that's where that cycle continues. And so it has to come down to, you experienced that. That's not your identity. That's part of your learning curve, your evolutionary process on this planet. Now, what are you going to do to heal from that, and then be a proponent for the healing of others? That's where the empowerment comes in. Just imagine if we had major shifts between men and women that said, okay, I'm no longer going to hide from this, and I'm going to come forward, and I'm going to do whatever's necessary to embrace my healing, because I deserve to be liberated from that experience.
Right.
I deserve to be a whole, comprehensive, divine being living for my highest possibilities. And I'm going to help others do the same afterwards. That's what we need to encourage.
Well, I think that the fact that we deserve to be healthy, we deserve to be vital, we deserve good food, good water, we deserve love, we deserve pleasure, we deserve all these things. And I think because we've been hustling and grinding, and we've been so worn out from just trying to survive and living here in the US. And I mean, it happens to people all over the world. But I think that we almost feel like it has to be a big old struggle just to be peaceful and just to be vital and just to be healthy. And it doesn't have to be that way. Now, I definitely agree that you got to take accountability, not for what happened to you, but how you respond to it, right? So, it shouldn't have happened. And I think earlier when Cole was talking to me about, he felt like he may not have been as it didn't affect him maybe in a way that he thought gained all of this attention. But you don't, like, that's what I want to really get across. It doesn't have to be hard. It can be very easy. It's our birthright to be healthy and vital and to be peaceful. So, I know that the work is hard. I do the work every day on myself. Shit ain't easy. It's not. And it ain't fun. And, you have your highs and your lows in it. And sometimes you got to go back and revisit why, but it's worth it, because the ripple effect that it brings can heal all of us. Go ahead, Cole. Ah. Mm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Wow. I do want to just say one thing about that, Cole, that you're talking about. Sometimes, because sex is a natural thing, you have natural responses to it. So a lot of times it just felt good. And so that's where also the guilt comes in. So you don't necessarily take it as, I got raped. You take it as, oh, snap, I reacted this way. So now I'm part way guilty for it. So just wanted to put that out there. That ain't right either. Your body just reacted naturally to whatever. So now you can go ahead and answer the question.
Great point, Wendy, and thanks for asking the question, Cole. I think as men, particularly, we need to move beyond just the sports and barbershop talk. You know, when men come together, generally speaking, too often it's about, you know, other women, the conversation, or women rather. It's about sports. You know, we don't go deep. You know what I mean? We don't really speak from my brother's keeper. You know, what's going on with you, brother? You know what I mean? Talk to me, man. You know what I mean? I got love for you. I know we're all men here. We're going through an evolutionary process. You know, let's have a heart-to-heart talk. We got 10 brothers here, and let's talk about some of the things we've experiencing and that are really holding us back from living from our highest possibilities. We need to change that narrative, brothers like you and I, Cole, where we demand that, you know, healing circles for men, you know what I mean? Man talk, where we come together and we're like, hey, okay, let's take sports off the table. We can talk about that anytime.
Right.
I mean, let's, you know, take women off the table unless it's dealing with our specific issues and what we're going through. And let's talk about what we're experiencing. And, you know, it's simply a matter of men standing up, like Cole and I, saying this is manhood going forward. You know what I mean? We need to talk about what our experiences are, what's holding us back. Because when we actually deal with that, then we can be a much more, how can I say it, fully, you know, how can I say it? We can show up better in the world as real men. Yeah. So we need to change the narrative on why we talk as men.
Yeah. And, you know, I was just thinking you were talking about men to men, right? And because the women are doing these circles, you know, we've been doing it. We're very communal. Anyway, you always see the women in any culture for centuries gathering together, whether it's during their moon cycle in the red tent or whether it's just in the kitchen. You know, they're always together talking and they talk freely. But I think because we're nurturers and things, we want to take care of that brother, whoever he is, who is experiencing some kind of pain. And then we go into like the nurse mode. We go into like the mama mode. We go into the, I can just do this and he gonna be okay. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of where the balance gets off, is because we find ourselves trying to take care of him, and he doesn't need a mom. He needs a partner, but he needs to be able to do his own work. So it's super important for women, for us to take the step back. All we need to be doing is looking in the mirror, fixing our stuff. And let the brothers come in and people like Manifest and, you know, support the brothers, because they know, you know, we ain't them. So we don't know.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, and I want to hear Cole just a moment here. One of the things, my dad's a former probation officer for about 25 years. And I know when we were going to the SageMen healing retreat recently, I asked him, I said, Dad, you know, why is it from your perspective, you're a lot older than I am, that, you know, some women today seem to, how can I say it, want to lead our healing processes,
right?
If you will. So first and foremost, I want to commend those women who are stepping up to help men see that they need to heal first and foremost, that they need to engage the healing processes. So by no means do I want to disparage or dismiss that important work that women are doing. However, at some point in time, sooner rather than later, men need to lead their own healing processes. Because when you look at the past few generations, they've been primarily led by female single-parent households. So you have men who all they've known is being led by and getting permission from their mothers, their grandmothers. And then I also taught PE at the elementary school level, where that's primarily women as well. So, you know, you have a lot of, and through my own organizing these healing retreats and workshops, oftentimes the majority of the men that show up say they came because their lady told
Yeah.
them they need to show up.
Right.
So it's like, when are men coming on their own accord for their own empowerment and their own healing? So that's something that's been frustrating for me, and I'm determined to help change that narrative. So, as you just said, I think it's very important that women, engage and encourage men to go through their healing process. But you all step back knowing that there's brothers like myself, like Cole, and like other men who are standing up to do the work, knowing that, hey, there are men on the scene today who are leading healing and transformational work for men, and we can support them without trying to be their mothers and grandmothers. Like, I need to be firmly involved in this process.
Right.
No, you need to support our process. You need to encourage us, but allow men to be men and to do their own work.
So we think we have about 4 minutes left, and we have 3 minutes left. Okay. And so I want Cole to jump in. But one thing that I do want to say from a woman perspective is that when you see a man who wants to do his own healing, you like, yeah, that's sexy. You can be doing these other things. You can be in the gym. You can be doing whatever. But if the brother is trying to heal himself, I love it. Okay, go ahead, Cole. We're going to give you another 2 minutes. Okay. Right. Right. Yes. So where can people find Divas in Defense? We have 2 minutes, so I want you to be able to give your contacts and manifest as well. Easy breezy. Okay. Okay, so please also type that in the chat too, because since you're here, and don't hang up when we hang up, and then manifest. Where can we find you?
Sure, thesagemen.com, thesagemen.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram as well. We're developing again a rights program. We've had many women and men in respective cities like New York, Atlanta, Philly, Texas, demanding that the SageMen start chapters there. We're very excited about that. We're in the process of developing that as we speak. So wherever you are in the world, we've even had some people in South Africa say, hey, bring it over there, that kind of thing. So we're excited. thesagemen.com, and we're also on Instagram as well. So we're on Facebook. So please reach out, help this movement for the SageMen and Divas in Defense. It's men stepping up to take control of their own healing and transformation process of being the best men possible, the best fathers, mates, sons in our families, in our communities. And as I was just reading one of the comments on Facebook Live, one of the women said, it's sexy to see that. You know what I mean? So I want to acknowledge Kimberly Baker Sims for saying that, it's so sexy and so attractive to see men stepping up and taking accountability and doing the work.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say thank you for doing the work, and thank you for, being in the gap for the brothers. And Cole, thank you for coming out and sharing your story. And I'm sure you two will connect to further the work and to help the healing nationally. So thank you. And then thank you for tuning into the Sanctuary. and we will see you next time. Peace. Okay, so thank you for being here on Facebook Live. I see 124 comments already. So hopefully, you all will continue the conversation. Cole's information is here. Manifest information I will put here, and please follow them. And if Manifest has to travel, I'm sure he's open to it. And let's really just get this movement pushing. And ladies, let's just step back and watch them do it and give them the support when they need it and when they ask for it. Okay?
Sure.
All right. Peace, everybody. We will see you next time. And thank you again.
Peace.